Joy, thank you very much for your time here on Mirror. Now, can I start by asking you how your mother, Sheikh Hasina, is doing? I ask you this question in the context of what the External Affairs Minister of India has told an all-party meet here in India. He's told her that when he spoke to her, she was in a state of shock.
Yeah, she is in good spirits now. She's over the initial shock. Obviously, all of us in the family were completely shocked because this was completely unexpected. For the rest of us family, we've been settled abroad most of our lives, so it's not a big deal. But for my mother, she has spent almost her entire life in Bangladesh. She never wanted to leave Bangladesh. Her plan was at the end of this term to retire and go live in her village home where she was born. And she always wanted to live in Bangladesh. She doesn't want to live anywhere else. So it was a big shock to her. And at the same time, she had to leave because the mob was approaching. They had no time. Basically, just grab a couple of suitcases, and she had to leave all her possessions behind, all our memories, and not just our memories. Many of the, over the years, many of the documents and pictures we had recovered of my grandfather and our family, because we lost access to all of those in the coup of 1975, and it took us decades to collect it all. Those were all in that house and in the museum. Well, they burnt the museum down and they looted the Prime Minister's residence. So we lost all of those all over again.
Was it particularly distressing for her to see her father's statue being desecrated?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I am so disappointed in these, they call themselves students. You know, it's one thing you're against the government, but to desecrate the memory of the father of the nation, to burn down the house where he and his entire family were murdered in cold blood, and then to desecrate the memory of our liberation war. And they call themselves pro-Bangladesh. How can you be pro-Bangladesh and be desecrating the memory of the father of the nation?
Joy, India's External Affairs Minister has tweeted to say that he's spoken to the Foreign Secretary of the UK. Is there any hitch, roadblock in Ms. Hasina getting asylum in the UK? Has there been a roadblock as far as a request is concerned?
Yes, these are complete rumors. My mother has not applied anywhere for asylum. She has not applied to the UK. She has made no request to the US or any other country. For now, what her next steps have not been decided, but she wants to go back to Bangladesh. She doesn't want to go live somewhere else. It's her country. She's quite adamant. And what we're hoping is that whether she's in politics or retired, that law and order is restored in Bangladesh so she can go retire peacefully if need be. And that if there are, and of course, our hope also is that there's a quick return to democracy, because right now, this is a completely unconstitutional situation. Our Supreme Court had ruled that any extra-constitutional circumstance has to be dealt within the ambit of the Constitution. What has happened has happened. What should have happened is that Parliament still exists in Bangladesh. Parliament is supposed to exist. Of course, they ransacked Parliament, and most MPs have gone into hiding, but Parliament is supposed to hold a new election, and democracy is supposed to continue. Well, they've broken that. They're appointing an interim government, which is fine, but then the interim government has to hold elections as soon as possible.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to confirm this. Are you telling us here on Mirror now that Sheikh Hasina has not applied for asylum anywhere, neither in the UK, nor in the US, nor in Finland? Is that something you can confirm for us?
100% confirmed. She has not applied for asylum anywhere. Those are all rumors.
Her going back to Bangladesh may or may not be possible, but till that doesn't happen, does she stay in India itself then?
No decision has been made in that regard at all.
Bangladesh's new interim government has been sworn in. Mohammad Yunus is heading it. Would you say that he's the best man for the job, at least for the moment?
You know, he is well regarded by certain sectors. So we shall see. Is he the best man? That remains to be seen. That will depend on his job performance, and that I cannot predict. He's yet to take over. So we shall see. Unfortunately, he's not a young man. He is 84, 85. So so it remains to be seen what his interim governance is like. First of all, first order is to restore law and order. Let's see if he's capable of doing that.
Joy, you have very confidently claimed that Pakistan's ISI is behind the unrest and the rioting that Bangladesh has seen over the last 2 months. Can you tell me what makes you this confident, and whether you believe that the Bangladeshi army and Mohammad Yunus were part of this plot as well? I ask you this because there have been various reports in Bangladeshi media that says that your mother was given 45 minutes of ultimatum by the Bangladeshi army to leave the country.
First of all, no. Bangladeshi army, Mohammad Yunus, they were not involved in this at all. There are rumors that the army pressured my mother to leave. Those are all completely false. I was on the phone with her throughout. I was on the phone with everyone. She was meeting with the chiefs of all three armed forces to figure out a way to control the situation, keep it from escalating. The only reason, actually, my mother didn't even want to leave the country. She had decided to resign, and she was going to make an address, and we would have an orderly transition of power. But because the mob was marching towards the Prime Minister's residence, there wasn't any time. So she didn't want to get on the helicopter. She was actually telling my aunt, "You get on the helicopter, I'm going to stay." That's when my aunt called me, put me on the phone with her, and I convinced her, "No, you have to go, otherwise they will kill you, and we cannot have that." So the armed forces, Mohammad Yunus, they had no role to play with in this. However, the reason I'm quite convinced, and I have no solid evidence, but I'm quite convinced that a foreign intelligence service had to be involved here, is that these protests started over really nothing, because the quotas weren't made by our government. Our government had actually lifted the quotas several years ago when there were quota protests then. The quotas were reinstated by the courts pending appeal. So this was completely temporary. And our government was fighting that. So our government was going to the Supreme Court asking for the quotas to be reduced. So our government was in support of this demand. So the protests themselves made no sense. Someone incited it. Then the incitation, the violence, which occurred because they took one of my mother's quotes, a statement. She had said that we don't want families of Rajakars getting government jobs. So they twisted that on social media that she called the students Rajakars. And then in the middle of the night at Dhaka University, an unknown group marched chanting, "We are Rajakar, we are Rajakar." So this is the equivalent of marching in the middle of Jerusalem in the middle of the night chanting, "We are Nazis, we are Nazis." Who did that? Nobody knows. But that caused our students to get angry. They attacked the protesting students. That's what started the violence. The police went in to stop the violence, and unfortunately, some of the police members used excessive force. Those were mistakes. We should have, but clearly someone was inciting the situation. And ultimately, so we suspended the police officer suspected of using excessive force. We formed a 3-member judicial committee to investigate the deaths during the protests. We promised justice. My mother herself invited the protesters for discussions, and we moved up the Supreme Court hearing on an emergency basis, and the Supreme Court reduced the quotas. So all of their demands were met. After that, after all the demands are met, then they escalated the protests to, "We want this government out." So clearly someone was inciting this, and to keep increasing this, they did not want the protests to stop. There was a target here. And when that finally happened, the final movement, they were attacking police. They were armed. They were armed with firearms. Now, where did these firearms come from? Somebody had to supply them. So that is why I suspect a foreign hand.
Joy, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much for speaking to us here on Mirror Now.